What's going on, guys, and welcome to Season 2, the premiere of Season 2 for Split Screen D&D, the place where we're attacking all things Dungeons & Dragons and other TTRPGs.
As you'll soon find out.
Ooh, right here from both sides of the screen. As always, my name's Tom Quinn, resident Dungeon Master here at Modern Myth.
And I'm Josh Winans, resident player character here at Modern Myth. I guess we kind of started hinting at what today's topic is in this world of Dungeons and Dragons and all the hearings of WotC and their decisions lately, there is a little bit of an exodus. And
There has been.
you know, not the worst thing to have happen to the hobby. In fact, I think this is a great opportunity to explore so many other amazing systems. But my goodness, it's like an ocean of amazing things, and one can feel like they're drowning. So I think it might be fun to just do a brief overview of some that looked interesting to us, some TTRPGs.
Okay. Some non-D&D TTRPGs.
Yes, sir.
Finally get to properly grace the channel, and I think that's a really, really exciting topic. Before we dive into that, all you guys at home, just like through Season 1, I know you guys are going to be crushing it down in the comments. I'm so excited to see what comes of Season 2 here. We are really going to be pushing to grow the channel going into Season 2 here. So the likes, shares, comments, notifications, subscribes, all of that works wonders. Be keeping your eyes peeled for the 600 subscriber giveaway, which will be coming down the pipeline. We're going to be doing another one of those dice vaults. Congrats again to TKC, the winner of the first dice vault. Will be, if we haven't already, we will be getting some photos of TKC's custom engraving on their dice vault.
Should be sweet.
Yeah, it's going to be cool. But yeah, you guys keep rocking it. We love all the engagement. Can't wait to see what comes in Season 2 here. Without further ado, let's dive straight into, I guess the way I've been thinking about this, and I hope that we were on a similar page anyways, was kind of if you are thinking about departing the 5th edition space, and there's been plenty of talk of that. I mean, I think when you look at some of the market share that Paizo gobbled up amidst everything that was going on with the OGL, there was a pretty clear indication that there were a number of players who this fiasco was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. And kind of as you started saying, I mean, I don't know that as a hobby, not just as a system, a singular system, but tabletop RPGs as a whole, I don't know that you could have a better churning of the waters than the catalyst that WotC kind of stirred up, because I think so many people right now are exploring other systems far and wide.
Yeah.
Some going very far afield, some staying pretty close to home. And I guess in my mind, that was kind of the place that I was thinking about this from was, hey, you know, what were some systems that we have enjoyed or have had an interest in ourselves? And that really ended up, the whole OGL deal was a great catalyst for me, because going into 2023, I was saying to myself, this is the year that I'm going to run. I had about three other systems that I've been wanting to run for a long time. And so it was kind of a no-brainer to be like, it's time to put my money where my mouth is,
right,
and get in and run some of those. But I think I'll pitch it over to you first if you've got a system in mind.
I think that the obvious one that, hey, if you like D&D 5e, why don't you just take a hip
scop
hoppity
and a jimp over to
over to the land of the Pathfinder, and you'll probably find some very welcome waters there. So I don't want to spend too much time on this, because I think a lot of people have talked about Pathfinder.
And in actuality, there's maybe like one or two really small points that I would have with regard to Pathfinder.
I'll make a couple too.
But I completely agree. I don't think you can have a conversation about where can 5th edition refugees go without mentioning Pathfinder 2e. Pathfinder 1e, I think, very, very viable as well. But if you're talking about people who are leaving from 5th edition and treading into, lukewarm waters that they're already pretty comfortable in, you're not. I don't know that you can find a a more immediate home than Pathfinder.
Yeah,
to be.
absolutely.
So what were some of your thoughts with regard to? I mean, do you have any kind of pros, cons?
Mostly
likes,
pros,
dislikes?
quite honest. And I you know, it's a big world, and I tried to.
Mm-hmm.
So a little confusing in a lot of ways, just because like instead of having a race and class, you have like ancestries and heritages and all this stuff. So you have to learn a whole different nomenclature. But once you get past that, the character creation is like it is awesome.
Yeah. Well, again, especially for I think a player like you who really values like a big part of your enjoyment out of the game is building characters, conceptualizing characters, and the number of options at your disposal.
It's insane.
In the what we'll call the Pathfinder line, both 1 and 2 are just nuts. But I mean, I think it is a pretty nototable difference.
And they did such a good job of balancing it that there is a part of me that's like, oh man, it's like I don't know if I can break the game. Like an OP character, I'll try, but it seems to be a much more balanced game. And what's nice about that is like you have this character concept. Like, I don't know if you want to play one of the major classes like a ranger. Well, in 5e, you're an idiot if you choose ranger. I'm just kidding.
But might catch some shade on that one.
I'm just kidding. But if you're like, man, I wish like my ranger or my monk was like, I just want to play a ranger or monk. Pathfinder, ranger, and monk are baller. In fact, there's not really a bad class out there. Some are more confusing than others. I forget, it was like the occultist or mysticist. I forget which one it was. But there's one that's really super confusing.
What I really like too, with regard to character creation, for those who are maybe still existing in the 5e camp and haven't started reaching out that
and
direction.
A free character builder too, which is super fun to play with. Anyway,
yeah, that's. I mean, well, that's actually something I was going to mention. Is for those people who, let's say, they entered 5th edition, maybe they're relatively new to the hobby, or they've been essentially 5e only in that space. They may well have been in the hobby only as long as D&D Beyond has been around. They're used to utilizing those tools.
Yeah.
I always encourage everyone to get to know your pen and paper style builds. I think, well, as we saw not too long ago, D&D Beyond servers with all sorts of server crashes, and so many people were posting about their games. Like, it's been 3 weeks since we played, and half of my table runs their characters on D&D Beyond. Your pencil and your good old number 2 and printer paper does not crash.
Does not.
But I mean, in the spirit of talking about an easy transition, there are many similar tools that someone could latch on.
Yeah, that's what I'd say as a player character. And I don't want to spend too much time. I could, but because it's really exciting. Yeah. But what are your takeaways?
Well, the big one that I think it really ultimately comes down to, I think so much of what you're doing in 5th edition really does translate. I mean, I think you understand, like you said, there's some nomenclature stuff that you have to, but once you make those connections, really the skill sets that you've been versed in at your 5th edition table are transfer almost seamlessly, if not seamlessly. I do think that the combat system that they've put together, or I should say the action economy, the 3-action system is a far more elegant expression of
so much
combat.
More freer. Yeah.
And I think that they do a better job of outlining case scenarios for why why you're fighting up in the top sails of a big ship that's lurching around in a storm. Okay, anyone could fall at any moment. Why you may want to save, you may want to be thinking about utilizing those actions in ways like, if in case my friend falls, I may want to catch him. That's a little more explicit. I think they've packaged it a little more explicitly in Pathfinder than they have.
Yeah, it just frees up, like, instead of just being, I'm going to attack, I'm going to move, and that's all you can do. It really frees you up to be more creative in combat. I totally agree with that.
Yep. I think everything that was said there, and I think we can pivot away just that quickly.
Yeah.
Because again, there's people doing entire videos on this.
Yes.
And many of them are, I'm sure, going to be great videos.
Yep.
So if you know Pathfinder's where you're wanting to go, by all means, I think we're trying to hopefully just touch the surface on a number of systems that something might pique someone's interest.
So, in that spirit, what do you got?
Let's start. I guess I'll start with kind of my guilty pleasure on the list, because this is a system I've been wanting to.
We're gonna talk
This is
about that, are
You
we?
ready to get classless, son? You ready to get skillless? You ready to get
Whoa, whoa,
Whoa.
whoa! I need a
Zero
safe
class.
word here.
0 class, no skill.
No, no.
Sounds like a typical Tuesday night, if I'm being honest.
What? No,
My guilty pleasure, which we come in, and these are in no particular order, but it's a system I've had an interest in for a really long time, and finally been able to run it. Symbaroum is really has kind of a dark, I guess you'd say, like kind of a dark Scandinavian fantasy kind of a feel to it. But as I've already kind of touched on, with regards to kind of moving from the 5th edition space, definitely a bigger departure from say Pathfinder, in that the system is classless and skillless. They have what's called archetypes, which are just kind of acknowledgments of your tropes, but it's really just a mashup of all these options. And they say these options kind of result in, the assassin-y kind of archetype, but you don't ever select assassin and then pull from, literally there's a floating pool of skills, and you go, I think I want that, and I think I want that. It's also, I guess you could say, it's a level-less system. You don't level. You earn experience and you spend it to upgrade your skills. So it's basically kind of, I don't want to call it like a tech tree or an advanced tree. Each skill can be upgraded from effectively kind of a novice to an adept to a master level. But there's very little by prerequisites from one skill to the next. So you really can kind of just go like, oh, I like that. I like this. So that's definitely all of that are cool reasons why this is something that I think I was telling you, maybe it was just prior to the recording here, but as much as I think there are people who are just going like, I'm trying to move kind of away from the WotC space in light of the OGL stuff. Obviously at this point, WotC has almost entirely backtracked on that, but I think it left a bad taste in some people's mouths. As and if all you're looking to do is just find that game that will satisfy your 5th edition craving, then probably Pathfinder's it. To my way of thinking, if I'm going to depart the 5th edition space, I want something that is going to diverge from what I've come to expect from 5th edition. And I think this delivers a lot of that. Like I said, both in the classless and skillless. It is still a die 20 system, although it's a roll low system. So rolling high is bad, because you're effectively trying to roll under your various tests. I will say there's plenty of nomenclature translation to do. Very little of that carries over. Whereas in Pathfinder, much of like your core attributes and things like that.
Yeah, you have all the same skills, constitution, and all that.
This is a bigger departure in that regard. It is essentially a DM roll-less system. The DM does not roll in this system.
Like this a lot.
It's so effectively
take a power away.
Yeah, for people out there, it's effectively when you're attacking, you are rolling your attack. When you're being attacked, you are rolling your defense. So
they have like a set, like the enemy has a set attack.
Yep. They'll have a set, and based on what they're attacking with, they might have multiple skills or abilities at their disposal, and they may vary. So some cool things there. And one of the biggest things I'll say is with regard to the arcane in this world, or mysticism in this world. The lore built into the system I really, really like. Effectively, the idea is that people who shape mystical energies, the act of doing so is effectively twisting forces of nature to your will. Whereas, kind of in the D&D space, you're kind of pulling at the weave, and this is more like it's tethered directly to nature, and nature doesn't fuck with that shit. Nature does not like to be twisted, and the cost of doing this is nature pushes back by corruption erupts into the world by doing that. And into you. So casters, rather than being limited by, say, a spell slot, as would become to expected in the D&D space, they have a certain tolerance for corruption, and it's actually a way you could just flat out lose your character. Your character could become so corrupt they turn into an abomination because you opted to be a little too loose with your spells, and there's a number of variables that could play into it. But it makes for this really cool a system that feels very unique and tethered to the world. It's not. I mean, corruption and dangerous magical implications are nothing new, but it's just a different way of expressing magical limitations, and it really ties into my last point, which is as I have no problem with the sprawling. Take Faerun, for instance, if you're talking about Forgotten Realms or any setting. There are many settings in the Dungeons and Dragons space that are pretty sprawling. The setting that is kind of inherent to Symbaroum is, I would say, actually a pretty consolidated one, and it's one that really harkens back to kind of the old school. Here is the town, and there is the dungeon, and that dungeon kind of takes the face of, it could take the face of actual dungeons, but this ancient old growth forest that has begun to exhibit the effects of corruption due to the influence of humans in the space. But effectively, going into that old growth forest is kind of leaving the warmth of the fire, and now you're into the deadly, dangerous parts of the world that hold the ancient secrets of the civilization that the game's namesake. This collapsed ancient civilization of Symbaroum. So really cool, very kind of a dark, gothic kind of a feel. But all things considered, I think a relatively easy transition. I know as a DM, obviously the roll-less, that I'll say that wasn't my favorite thing. I like rolling dice as much as the next guy. But I think it does, so many of the conversations that ping pong around about, to fudge or not to fudge, should I roll in the open? Do I roll behind? It's like all that just, it's not even a conversation anymore. I really don't know why that's even a conversation, if I'm being honest. But it is, and it's just, this game has basically circumvented that as a concern. So
that's cool.
A cool little system. For all of the systems we're going to be talking about, links will be down in the description. But definitely, I would highly recommend checking it out if you and your 5th edition group are looking for something that, again, is a little unorthodox compared to what you've come to expect, or I should say, less orthodox than Pathfinder 2e would supply you. So, thoughts or feelings on that? Or
it seems really interesting. It sounds like the setting is. So, is it like apocalyptic kind of feeling?
I would say no. I don't really want to go into too much of the lore because there's plenty there. But effectively, this kind of exodus from the southern portion of the land, which is like the Deadlands. This great war took place. These dark lords, very, very fantasy tropic.
Sounding like a Dark Souls, Bloodborne almost like feeling.
Yeah, I don't know if it's quite that dark, but it's like I said, it's just kind of it reminds me a little bit of kind of your traditional Grimm's fairy tales, like the ones that were really kind of a lot of kind of the Baba Yaga kind of feeling. This kind of I think the thing that most excited me about it was, like I said, moving to a classless system. I think I can pretty safely say that this is the first system that I've run that's been truly classless. There's many systems. The vast majority of the ones that I run, if not all of them, have been fundamentally class-based systems. And I've built out a couple characters using the tools, and it's like I said, it's just a really solid. There is for those who are interested in it, there is the core rule book. There is a advanced player's guide, which is basically kind of your additional and more advanced options for building characters. And then there's your I can't remember, bestiary, creature codex, whatever I can't remember their verbiage is for it, but stacked with monsters. Really cool little system, definitely worth a check out.
Yeah, I like it.
I'm really stoked about, because I knew we'd already discussed that Pathfinder was gonna make it in, but the other systems that you have, I think I know nothing about, and this is really what excites me about TTRPGs, is because anyone who's begun venturing into new territory, it could take one little tweak that you go, holy crap, that is such a cool way of expressing yourself at the table. So I'm really stoked to hear what you got.
Yeah, absolutely. So this was a much harder assignment for me to find systems, because I am not a DM or GM, and so this was hard. But I tried to find systems like, okay, I just want to find something that interests me.
Yep.
And if you've been watching the channel for like any time at all,
You know he's a big Captain Kirk fan.
Oh,
So
actually, there is a Star Trek
yeah.
tabletop RPG, but that is not what I'm talking about because all I do is make a ton of Captain Picards and beat the game because he's the best. But if you know, if I watch this channel, I'm a big Dune fan, Frank Herbert's Dune, and there is a tabletop.
A couple, if I'm not mistaken, though.
There's a board game.
Oh, okay.
But I think this is the only.
I could be confusing it.
Adventures in the Imperium, Dune Adventures in the Imperium, is one I looked at, and I didn't know anything about it. I was like, oh, Dune, let's take a look. And okay, so totally different than D&D 5e, like very much different.
Right out of the gate or at the end. You put it wherever you want.
Okay.
I'd be really curious to hear your thoughts about what that transition might look like. You know, like because there. But I'd love to hear it through that lens because I've been really thinking about these other systems in that same way. But tell me a little about it. Because
first, let me explain the game a little bit.
I am completely out of my depth with regard to Dune Adventures.
So what is interesting? So first off, things I absolutely loved about it is the lore of Dune is rich. It's very detailed. It's a very interesting world, and I feel like the writers of this book were able to sum up pretty darn well a lot of the. They talk about CHOAM. They talk about the different houses. They talk about how the treaty where no atomics are used. They talk about lasguns. They talk about all these really interesting. I'm going through this fast just so people who are like, oh, I know Dune. I know those are words.
Either you're going to know what he's talking about or you're
you
not.
Don't.
And either way, well, that'll lead into one of my questions here. But keep
so it breaks it up so that even if you don't know any of the words I just said, you'll learn through the book.
That was effectively going to be my question. If you're coming to it as a total Dune virgin, do you think you'll be able to get something? Okay.
Yeah. It's a crazy world. Though if you do know Dune, I think it will. You'll be like, oh, okay, yeah, cool. It expects me to know this stuff. This is the world is built, going deep into the lore, which is just amazing. Okay, so I really enjoyed that. However, there are some things that are like a total different thing. It's a 2d20 system.
Okay.
I don't know if you've heard of a 2d20 system, but
I certainly have never run one.
So similar to Symbaroum, is that what it was called again?
Symbaroum, yeah.
Symbaroum. It's the lower the better. But you only roll d20s. That's all you roll.
Okay.
And so if you like skill challenges from 4E, you will love this system because almost everything breaks down into a skill challenge.
And I will say, if you're going to cite a redeemable quality of 4th edition, the skill challenge was it. Now you just said everything's skill challenge. Does that include combat? Does combat
Even
play out
combat.
Okay, cool.
So they call them, I think they call them conflicts. There's 5 different kind of conflicts. There's like duels, skirmishes, full all-out war.
Wait, conflicts. I'm starting to have conflicts, encounters. I can't draw the line.
I know.
Here.
It's just all the same. But so you approach each from like a skill challenge, and you take how many d20s you get is based upon your skills and like if you're trained in certain things. And what's cool is you crit often. It's like 7 and below might be a crit based upon your character's strengths.
Okay.
And so you might be critting all the time. What happens when you crit is you save, you can roll an extra dice. So you get a better chance. So for example, maybe your skill challenge is you need to succeed 4 times, but you only start off natively with 2 dice.
Okay.
Well, now you need to start either using your resources or using the momentum that you've been building up. So it's a really cool.
Almost, as you're describing it, feels a little bit like a, forgive the term if people don't know what the hell I'm talking about, a dice building game, or there are games that are deck building games where you're building a deck of cards in real time. But there are some games out there where you're doing the exact same thing with dice. So you have.
I didn't know that. Okay.
And actually, I think a number of dice pool systems, if I'm understanding the ability to kind of go on a run with your dice.
And you can build. And what's cool is it becomes a pool, so everyone at the table has access to that momentum.
Oh, I really like that.
That's pretty cool.
That's cool. Well, especially see, and here's where something I think gets particularly interesting is there are times in which, say, a skill challenge is playing out, where a character really delivers a lot of momentum, and as a DM, I think you can go like it can make complete sense that that momentum would carry the party forward in their pursuit of this challenge.
Yep.
And you don't always have good mechanical tools to represent that. I mean, in some cases, you're on the floor, like say for instance, granting advantage if we're in D&D speak, or 5th edition speak, granting advantage on the fly, things like this. But I love the idea that they've kind of built into the mechanics that this momentum pool grows and kind of allows for that's cool.
And what's cool is as the so I'll get into the other stuff. I'll just continue rolling with this while we're talking about it. The DM is also rolling, obviously, for the opponents. They can also gain momentum, that kind of stuff.
I like that.
So they have some like ways they can punish or like do certain things. So it's a really interesting because it's not combat. You don't have HP. All right, you can lose. Like if the other
can you die?
Yes.
Okay.
But it's not. So the point of Dune Imperium is not like in D&D. You have character flaws and you're building a character. You start at level 1 and you grow up to a big badass.
Boy.
And in Dune Imperium, that's not really. You're trying to complete the objective. You're trying to complete the story. That is the focus.
Okay.
You don't really level. Do you get more resources? Do you get more assets? Yeah. Can you grow a little bit in your stats? Sure. But the point is you're trying to complete the story.
So it almost sounds like, and I think actually this I would put in the boon category for any system, that kind of real time dice and resource management to manage conflicts is the portion of the game you're going to get better at. Not as a character necessarily, but as a player. You're gonna come to understand now's the time to capitalize. Now's the time I have to be. I need to conserve my resources, and I think that anytime a system is allowed to or leverages a player's ability to be skilled in their thinking and creativity in the game space,
100%, and it really rewards like you need to play to your character's strength. Because if you don't, you're probably going to fail a lot. But if you play to your character's strengths and really try to eke out what your character's good at, you're probably going to be successful. So there's a little bit of metagaming there, like trying to make sure that you're. But I mean, I don't think it's anything bad. But as far as like in D&D, we have role playing and narrative storytelling and combat. I think are kind of like big pillars. In Dune, it's all about the narrative, all about the story.
Okay,
like 100%.
So my question, I guess, is
I'm not saying you can't include other things, but that's what it feels like the system is encouraging.
Is it a situation where? Is it a situation where? How do I phrase this? Where when you sit down to play, is the system handing you that objective? Like, hey, you need to this emissary is going to be they're going to be boarding their ship and they're going to be taking off, and that piece of information that they're taking is going to start a war,
and you need to stop and intercept them.
You need to intercept it, whether it be by stealing it or. But is that something where the DM is empowered to instantiate that, or does the system kind of saying, here's a series of specific to Dune's lore conflicts?
Oh, yes, it's very vague. So it really lets the DM really explore. Again, you have their 5 conflicts, so combats was like 3, dueling, skirmishes, and all-out warfare. Then there's like espionage, and then like I think it's just like communication kind of stuff.
Okay.
So that's where all your conflicts run into. So
interesting. Using
your you got to get to assassin. Well, first maybe you want to find out the diplomats. Maybe you want to find out the diplomat's schedule. So you need to infiltrate, do some espionage.
Gotcha.
And then, you got caught. Now it turns into some dueling or something. And it's a really it feels, like I said, it's really organic. It's all about this story.
Well, I like that pretty much everything, especially that last bit you were just outlining, I think actually speaks to portions of D&D that don't always get paid the same service. That ultimately really just comes down to the type of group, DM and players that you have.
But this really encourages that side of it.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
No, that's really not at all what I expected. In terms of the breakdown. And I like I said, I need to look into it more. I have a feeling it mimics other dice pool systems. I don't know that I've seen.
There's a lot of
die 20 pools, but a lot of die 6 pools are pretty common.
Okay.
And that momentum is another, you know, it's a cool variable, and it's a variable that I could definitely see integrating into my own game.
So the last couple of points I will say, I don't think this is a good game to get into if you don't have a lot of experience. I was looking into this being my first DM experience, and after exploring it, I'm gonna pull back because I think you need some experience to be as a DM, especially to pull it off. Players, I think you can DMs can limp along players just fine. But this is a serious world, and it's an epic story you're trying to tell. This is not a lighthearted story. You're not going to be going to a bar and getting drunk. Well, maybe you will, but for the purpose of trying to complete an objective.
Right. And for a game that sounds like it is really planted its flag in the we're here to tell. You know, I mean, if to some extent, it's tethered to the tone of Dune. I mean, you can't go, you know, like if it was Jim Henson's Muppets Dune, then
oh my gosh, sorry, I just watched Muppets Treasure Island and I absolutely adore that film. Oh my gosh, Muppets Dune would be amazing.
but I mean, then obviously, like you could even maintain a narrative and probably still have those hijinks, you know, and so.
But anyway, so I
very
recommend it, but yeah, there's some stipulations. All right, next up, sir.
My next up is I don't think I can technically say it's an OSR entry, but I was really torn on this entry for our list. But in the spirit of really talking about those who may be departing the 5e space, I was really torn between Dungeon Crawl Classics, which I mean I think is one of the most, or certainly one of the more lauded OSR entries. But I was also neck and neck for the running was Five Torches Deep, and ultimately landed on Five Torches Deep specifically for the framing that I was talking about. Is both of them I think would be great landing places if, as a 5th edition DM or as a 5th edition table as a whole, you're going, you know what, I've had an interest in the OSR space, but I've just never had the impetus to pull that trigger and start exploring that. If the OGL was that impetus, I would say that either of those would be great places to land. But the main reason that I went with Five Torches Deep is mainly because I actually think that it was published specifically with that goal in mind. It was published with the idea of, hey, 5th edition players, we know you love 5th edition. We know there's things that you love about that system. We're not here to convince you that all of that needs to change. And for that reason, I think it actually serves as more or less a stepping stone. I think if you fell in love with Five Torches Deep, you likely are a candidate for the broader OSR. But it really does, I think, delivers kind of a nice medium point. The core mechanics are still very much modern Dungeons and Dragons. In that, you know, it's a die 20 system. It's you're adding your modifiers, AC, all of that stuff that you know, when your DM tells you to do something, you're going to instinctively know what they mean. There's not going to be any question about it. Where it really slants toward the OSR, and this I think is my first bit of evidence to support that this was the design of this publication, is the very first page. Basically is a breakdown of this is what the OSR is, this is what 5th edition is, this is what this book is. I mean, it literally is kind of saying, hey, you know, this is how we're trying to use this product to bridge the gap. I would say, especially compared to 5th edition, highly simplified character creation process, as is so par for the course for OSR. It's you know, a much more limited both by race and class. So you're dealing with 4 races and 4 classes. Each class then can kind of subdivide down into 3 subclasses. And while I think to a lot of 5th edition ears, that sounds like you've just been limited in some tremendous ways.
Yeah.
I actually think a huge scope of really kind of your core archetypes, you know, when you basically have your fighter breaking into as a sub archetype or as a subclass, your barbarian, I think they still call it fighter, but kind of your champion fighter,
right,
or your ranger. They kind of so they kind
I
of end up
see.
splitting the difference. Whereas then the rogue breaks into your assassin, your
Assassin.
bard, and your I'm sorry, the thief breaks into your assassin, your bard, and your bard, and your rogue. So they kind of break down in different ways.
Yeah, I've heard of similar systems before.
Yeah, something that I really like. Again, it's not everybody's cup of tea. Is that by race you actually roll your stats differently depending on what your race is, which is a really I really like that about this system. In that kind of the expression of we'll call it human flexibility or human perseverance or whatever. You roll your stats down the line, but then you have the ability to move two of them around.
Ooh, that's pretty powerful.
Whereas like dwarves have preset numbers for some of their stats, and then you roll the rest of the stats.
Oh, that's interesting.
So yeah, it really kind of dictates your various and then those stats ultimately again in I think broadly OSR fashion. Your stats do dictate your what classes you can pursue to some extent. So it's not just wide open kind of character design space. It really is kind of the dice begin to help you in shaping this character. But so much about the system, or so much about any system, I think, really comes down to what is the process for building characters. Because if the process for building characters is this massive, bloated, HP-laden, tons of skills thing, it's very difficult to bake in that kind of OSR tension. And the system really, while it's giving you the core, the skeleton of kind of 5th edition by way of how to roll all the dice, how to make all the checks, how to the muscle and skin it's grafting onto that is very much kind of the pared down, vulnerable forms that you kind of come to expect in the OSR space. There's some really cool tools by way of DMs. There, the what are called monster manual is not a monster manual, it is a monster builder. They don't provide you any pre-made
blueprint kind of a thing.
It basically is a series of attributes that you can graft together to make your own custom creatures, which is frankly, as far as I'm concerned, once you've been in the DM chair once you've gotten to the point where you're comfortable and you're enjoying your prep process, I don't know too many DMs who are just grabbing vanilla stuff out of the monster manual. Even if they're going like, oh, I want to do, I'm going to do a bugbear chieftain. They're going like, well, my bugbear chieftain's going to have this and this and this, which is, like in some regards, well, obviously. I mean, everything I put in the game breathes fire. except my PCs. They don't get access.
I know.
Stupid PCs. So that's one really cool tool. A huge nod. It's just, I mean, it's something that any DM, I think, when they look at it, they've earned themselves a smirk or a chuckle or a nod. They've got a really cool dungeon builder that's towards the back of the book that uses Rubik's Cube. And you literally just randomize it and you look at one face and the colors each mean something different, and there's your dungeon.
That's kind of crazy.
Really kind of a cool, I mean, it's a deceptively robust and elegant way. Now, these obviously are small dungeons, but a good way that you could do it is to take one side, build out a floor of your dungeon, and allow that to descend to a different face of the
right.
But it's it's just a very kind of almost kind of a tongue-in-cheek way of putting it together.
Like
so some really cool tools. The main reason, like I said, it makes my list is because anybody whose back was broken by the OGL straw and had inclinations towards the OSR. If you're having a hard time, I know the conversation is had not infrequently about, hey, DMs, or videos, I should say, discussing how do you get your players to try new games.
Yes.
And I think if you have an inherent interest as a DM or as a player for that matter, and you're trying to get the rest of your group to take an interest, you're not going to give them a better introduction to the space if they've already been tempered by 5th edition. Because the glove's just going to fit, and they'll go, okay, I see how this is different, but I'm not having to go, wait, how do I do that? Wait, what? Which dice? Which all of that is just seamless. So, big link back to 5th edition, and I think they've really done a supreme job of delivering a product that, honestly, I think I could probably take without you guys knowing anything about the game,
Mm-hmm.
sit down and run a session, and it
be
would
able to figure it
almost
out.
run seamless compared to our true 5e session. I mean, it's so there's so much synonymity between the core of the two
Right.
systems.
Was there anything that you could see us struggling with though? Like,
Well, I think the biggest struggle is making the 5th edition ethos understand that being vulnerable and dying can be a very good thing. It
Yeah.
can be an exciting thing. It can be a narrative catalyst. It can be all of these things.
Right.
And I think leaving the 5e headspace where you've likely invested a lot of time developing a character, that's one of the big disconnects. I think a lot of people go like, I don't want to build a character that I love and then have them die. It's like, well, that's not to say you won't love the character, but you're thinking about building a 5th edition character, and that's not what this is. It's a very different, you're not spending a week writing a backstory and all this and that. So I think that's the biggest pitfall towards that transition.
Yeah.
But I think I don't think that if your players go, and this isn't for me, the
No, you
OSR is not for them.
yeah, okay.
Like this is the stepping stone, the introduction. And I think, like I said, if anyone listening is thinking about going that direction, the biggest thing I'd go into if I'm speaking to players right now is go into that process thinking my character and the rest of the players' characters being vulnerable is an asset to this experience.
Gotcha.
It is not a step back. It is not it's not a transgression on the players. It's an important part of that experience being different.
Right.
So
No, I dig it. Yeah. I'm dig it.
I think actually we're cutting it a little close to our time limit.
Yeah.
I know we actually had some
I had some more,
other
too.
other entries in here.
Yeah.
But what I love about cutting it close to our timeline is two things. One, we can do a follow up with additional systems because there's one in particular I'm really excited
There's
about.
one
putting on your radar.
I'm excited too. Yeah.
But what also makes me excited is I think that also will leave a little bit of a gap for episode 2. So, in addition to any of your thoughts or feelings on what we touched on here, some of your favorite systems at home, I will say for those of you in the comments, you have not gone unheard. I promise you that some of the systems you guys have already been talking about will be making it into part 2. But what systems? I'd love to hear. What systems do you guys at home want to see hit episode 2? Hopefully we'll get 4 or 6 more systems that we can kind of highlight.
Yeah, I was just amazed at how deep the ocean is of like systems.
Oh, it's nuts.
insane,
It really
man.
is nuts, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's and especially like I think the more indie you go, like you can find, especially you start getting into like 1-page RPGs.
Yeah.
Where it's the whole game and it's like, and there's some really interesting concepts existing in those spaces. So you hit them with what you want, but I would love to hear what you thought about any of these entries. But definitely we will be having part 2 because we both have a few more to hit on the list.
Yep.
We don't want to hit you with an hour and a half video here. So, so we'll have part 2 coming out, but I have a feeling we'll have a little space in part 2. So, bust them out in the comments. I would love to hear what system cannot not make a presence in episode 2. Or cannot not. Double negative.
Ooh.
Get with it. What needs to be in that episode?
I love it.
Any thoughts for the people at home?
No. I'll say as a player, if your DM comes to you and says like, "Hey, maybe we should give this a shot," I will say like, "It's gonna be hard. I want to play. I like medieval fantasy. Like when we're talking about the Pathfinder, man. Like I had to stop myself from obsessing over it because it looks super fun.
Yeah. Like I said, I know that the second that we run Pathfinder, you're gonna be done with 5th edition. I know that you.
I can already tell.
I don't know if the ladies will.
Yeah.
They may well be as well, but I know that you will. I mean, the idea of like being like, ooh, multiple feats every level,
like, oh my god. Anyway, I won't. Cutting. My point being that. Don't be afraid to try something new. The worst thing that's going to possibly happen is you try it for a night, 2, 3, I don't know, and you're like, not for me. Yeah. Your life will not be ruined. life will continue. I promise.
Yeah. And I would say when you win/if you go back to whatever you call home base,
You can learn some lessons.
I
from
would
other systems.
I would challenge you to not have taken something away from
Yeah,
that.
agreed.
You know,
Good
both as a
point.
player and as a DM. I mean, you know, there's just way too many great minds building cool things to cast your lines off in a pond and
Yes.
be like, I'm gonna sail around. I'm gonna make that turn one more time, and just, you know, there's so much out there. Again, I thought it was really fortuitous that all this played out. I mean, the OGL fiasco was all kind of playing out right in the in between when we were just finishing season 1.
Yeah.
So we didn't. In some ways, I feel blessed because, frankly, I don't want to talk about. I didn't want to, and I still don't want to talk about that stuff.
Yeah, there's literal lawyers talking about that stuff. We don't need to
But like I said, it seemed like the stars were kind of aligning and going like, this is the universe giving me the nod to go like, hey Tom, there's those systems that you've wanted to run for a while.
Tom,
That's the voice of the universe.
There's some systems you should
that's
try out.
That's obviously the universe's voice. That you know, and it just and it really made me excited to kick off season 2, knowing that we could kind of come right out of the gates talking about some other systems and again, it's the commenters, the subscribers to our channel are a pretty eclectic group as far as their taste and interest, which is really cool.
Yeah.
You know, so and again, many of these rabbit holes that I'm able to stumble into and fall indefinitely are thanks to you guys in the comments. So keep those recommendations coming, because people put stuff onto my radar that I was like, what? I've never heard of it, and I'm checking it out and I go, wow. And then other systems that I'm like, I've heard about that for years and I've just never stuck my nose in the book.
Yep.
And then this was kind of the way to do it. So
There you go.
As the first official sign off for season 2, I think it's only right to give you guys at home a huge thank you for being along for the ride for all of season 1.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here for the start of season 2. I think we just keep it classic for the very first one.
I agree.
We can
We can get all weird
we can
later.
Get weird
We'll
later.
get weird.
You know, someone new might be here and they don't want to. You know,
They don't know what they got. They don't know yet what they've gotten into. Oh my goodness.
To all you guys at home, thank you guys so much for all the support and the comments and all the engagement. Thank you, sir, for making time every week to sit down and chew on some TTRPG stuff. So, for just this once, we've said it so many times over season 1, but for just this once, sir, the world is yours.
The world is yours.